Greetings, lovers of lore. Thank you for joining me for the second installment of the Wilds of Eldraine story. This part starts with Rowan. She's been venturing into towns, villages, the wilds, forever searching for a cure to the wicked slumber that plagues the lands. We find her at a crumbling, run-down castle. She was directed there by an odd creature, an 8-armed insectile woman masquerading as a talented human weaver. It still surprised Rowan that the creature didn't seek to fight her. Unfortunately, the castle she was sent to had already been looted. Rowan put the undead servants that roamed the hall to rest with her blade. Failure after failure wore away at her, and this was the last straw. She thought about what her brother would say, and her mind burst into rage and shame. She broke down and wept. Drained, she crawled into a bed that had somehow survived the looting. She fell into a dream. She was in the same castle, but it was restored and full of happy people. She was handed a drink by someone and taken to a table loaded with sumptuous foodstuffs. Her parents stood at the head of the table. They were healthy and joyous. Rowan felt her heart lurch and dropped her drink, running into her father's waiting arms. For some reason, she wasn't able to speak no matter how many times she tried. But her father understood. "You need our advice." Rowan nodded. He took his crown off and gently placed it upon her head. "Seek your blood in Ardenvale." And then Rowan awoke. The whole night had slipped by while she slept, so she set out for her old home. The story then switches to Kellen. He is now in the city of Edgewall, seeking the Witches 3. Now, Kellen is absolutely clueless as to how to approach this witch hunt, so he's literally just asking people, "Have you seen any witches, lady?" Nobody ever had. Well, except for people who would say yes just to make fun of him. "Sure, boy, there's a witch up the road, makes amazing pies. Tell her I sent you." That was the most recent joke at his expense. At least this time, the man tossed him a coin while saying it. Things had always seemed simpler to Kellen in the stories. Still, the vibrancy of Edgewall appealed to Kellen. It really did feel like he was living in one of his mother's stories. There was a lady selling wooden birds that had been enchanted to sing beautifully, and there were dwarves and mages and other curiosities. Kellen arrived at the pie shop he was directed to. There's no way she's a witch, but there's no harm in seeing if she knew any witches, so he got in line to buy a pie. Waiting there, Kellen finally got his first look at the curse of wicked slumber. A nearby man was standing in place, completely asleep. Purple mist surrounded him as he drooled on his own armor. This had apparently been going on for so long that the armor had actually rusted from it. Kellen was thinking about what all this meant when someone accidentally bumped into the sleeping man. He fell over and nobody went to help him back up. Kellen decided if no one else would, he would help. But as he reached out towards the man, someone grabbed his wrist saying, "Shouldn't do that." It was a girl in a red cloak. "Why not?" he asked. "He needs help." And the girl responded, "You're that kid looking for witches." Kellen was a little concerned, so he said, "Maybe." But she grabbed him. "Okay, let's go." And Kellen said, "Wait, what about that man?" And she said, "Look, if you touch him, there's a chance you could get it too. At least we think so. Nobody's sure." So as she dragged him away, Kellen looked back over his shoulder and he saw that people were using wooden implements to lift the sleeping man back to his feet. The girl told Kellen, "You're going to draw the witch's attention, blundering around asking about them." "Well, how else am I supposed to finish my quest?" Kellen shot back. And the girl looked at him scornfully. "How can you have a quest? You don't even have a sword." Kellen was indignant. "Real heroes don't need swords. I have these." He held out a pair of basket hilts made of old wood. They kind of glowed. The girl was unimpressed by what he held out, and she continued on. "My brother might be able to help you." Kellen looked hopeful. "Oh, can I meet him?" But she looked downtrodden. She responded saying, I was actually hoping you had already seen him. He's been gone for days. I thought maybe you ran into him. His name is Peter. Kellen shook his head. I've met no Peters. The girl was disappointed and turned to leave. But Kellen called out, wait, maybe if you come with me, we can find your brother. Help me find the witches. My lord will help you find your brother. The girl considered, and then she agreed, introducing herself as Ruby. Tell me about this lord. Kellen didn't want to mention that Lord Talion was a Fey High Lord, so he vaguely said, they don't like being talked about. Ruby frowned, but let it go. They headed out of Edgewall. Kellen ultimately felt let down by the wilds. He thought they would be beautiful, but the Phyrexian invasion had despoiled Eldraine. Phyrexian remnants dotted the landscape, and Ruby explained that they come from another world, according to King Kenrith. As they traveled, a pixie started to taunt them, and Ruby pulled an apple out of her bag and whipped it with pinpoint precision, nailing the pixie mid-air. Kellen was duly impressed, but a moment later, an arrow shoots by, missing Kellen's face by the tiniest bit. In fact, his nose ended up with the tiniest little slice by the arrowhead passing by. The arrow was fired by a knight wearing a metal wolf's head, and he was coming straight for them. He howled as the children ran. Ruby looked back at Kellen. It would be a really good time to use those hilts. Unfortunately, Talion hadn't really explained to Kellen how the hilts worked. He just said they would help refine Kellen's abilities. Kellen had no idea what that meant, so he did what came naturally. He threw one of the hilts as hard as he could at the charging knight, and it just bounced off harmlessly and floated back to Kellen's hand. Ruby groaned. Kellen cringed. Sorry, still learning. As they ran, there was a pack of strange squat wolves ahead. Ruby spoke. Witch stalkers. You're not magical, right? Kellen said, I have no idea, as Ruby ran forward straight through the pack of wolves. If Kellen was half Fey, these things might tear him apart, but he figured if Ruby was fine, he would be too, and he ran amongst the wolves. It was exhilarating. He finally felt like he was having an adventure. He made it through untouched, and just in time as well, because the Wolf Knight had caught up. Ruby crossed her fingers. He's gotta be magical. The Wolf Knight let out another thunderous howl and dashed off with the witch stalkers in hot pursuit. We won, Kellen cried. And then they both noticed the cabin. Where did that come from? How did they not notice it before now? The cabin should have been hard to miss. It was covered in thorns and was jet black. The windows were purpled glass. Let's peek in the windows, suggested Kellen. They snuck closer. The thick glass made it hard to see the details, but there was obviously two people inside. One slumped over, one walking in circles around a cauldron. Could that be the witch? Ruby asked what the plan is. Kellen says, we're gonna wing it. That's not a plan, Ruby said. We can't win with magic, and we have no weapons. We have to improvise, was Kellen's response. Ruby grumbled, but followed along. Tell me when she's looking away from the door. So Ruby kept watch. The witch was chanting. It sounded to Kellen like she was getting ready to eat that night. He was distracted by a thunk. Ruby had tossed an apple. The thunk was it hitting armor. The Wolf Knight was back. The blood on his armor showed how things had turned out for the witch stalkers. Kellen was torn. Save Ruby or save the knight? Maybe if he saved the knight, she would help beat the witch, and then maybe the Wolf Knight would just kind of disappear when the witch died, like it happens in the stories. Kellen screwed up his courage and skittered into the cabin. He saw the knight. She was delirious. And was that a wooden arm? The witch was taunting her. What spice should I cook you with? Kellen was a simple village boy, so he did what felt right. Lowering his head, he ram-charged the witch. You're the one that's cooked! The witch screamed as Kellen forced her into the cauldron. Black smoke billowed out, burning Kellen's eyes. I have to free the knight and save Ruby, he feverishly thought. He dashed to the chair and he started yanking on the ropes. Are you strong enough to fight? He got a one-word reply. Hammer. It was half mumbled, so Kellen was dubious about her ability to fight, but also quite desperate. So he cast about looking for the hammer. Ruby crashed through the door. He's almost on us! At that point, Kellen had found the hammer, but he had a new problem. It was too heavy. He had to literally drag it across the floor due to its extreme weight. He put the hammer in the knight's hand. The knight stood, then immediately collapsed. The ordeal with the witch had taken too much out of her. The wolf knight was at the door. Ruby! He bellowed. Kellen was perplexed. Ruby was stunned. Peter? The wolf knight took off his mask. It was Ruby's brother. He had been ensorcelled by the witch, and with her death, the spell had broken. Peter told Kellen that he was now in his debt, and Kellen explained that his lord wanted this witch's cauldron as proof of her destruction, and if Peter would help him deliver it, then they would consider it even. As for the wounded knight, a simple healing salve made of herbs was enough to get her back on her feet. Kellen and Peter hoisted the cauldron, still filled with its disgusting contents, and when they stepped out the cabin door, they were somehow in Talion's realm. The High Lord himself was nowhere to be seen. They delivered the cauldron, and Talion's voice rung out. Hilda is next. Her magics shield her from my eyes. Seek out the magic mirror to find her. It's been taken from Castle Vandris. Climb the beanstalk that grows half a day from here, and you will find the mirror atop it. As Talion's voice faded away, so did his kingdom. They were left standing in front of the witch's cabin again. Ruby stared at Kellen. You serve the Fey King? Kellen looked away. Does it bother you that I serve him? Ruby stared back in surprise. No way! It means you are way braver than I thought. Kellen beamed in delight. And that ends this installment of the Wilds of Eldraine story. I actually really enjoyed this one in particular, specifically the spot when Kellen says, no, you're the one who's cooked. It's delightfully goofy. I love it. So, thanks for coming by. Big shout out to the channel members and patrons. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And if you enjoy what we do here, you too can join the channel membership or the Patreon to keep us going. Thanks for stopping by. Go enjoy some more lore. I'll see you for the next installment. And in the meantime, remember, my friends, lore is life.